Cup Series competition continues from the land of chaos, where the regular season rolls on and the playoffs get closer to being realized. Where tonight we welcome you to the virtual Talladega Super Speedway and round number 10 of the Season 3 4-Wide Racing Cup Series campaign with our live coverage right here on MaxSpeedTV. So happy to have you along for the ride. We're up in the broadcast booth atop the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. My name is Kenneth Bueno. We're going to have a lot of fun here tonight. Short story, this is the Talladega Super Speedway, and if you're a racing fan, then you don't need any introduction to know just how wild this place is and just how unpredictable things can get. We've already had a scintillating first 9 rounds of the season where we've seen multiple different winners on end. We're already rolling through the second half of this season, and it continues to get closer and closer as we try to decide the 10 that will make it for the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series playoffs in this season. But Talladega in itself a very tough track, and it looks like sort of an easy one when you give it a first glance, but as soon as you get into the nitty-gritty details of it, it does get tough. To name the history, Bill France insisted that there would be a longer and bigger track than the Daytona International Speedway, and he came up with this right in the middle of the Alabama state over in Lincoln, Alabama. It's a 2.66 mile large super speedway with 16 degrees at its lowest on the tri-oval and 33 degrees at its highest at the top of the banking in turns 1 through 4. So it is a large racetrack for sure, and that only brings to very high speeds, upwards of 200 miles per hour here at this track. It opened all the way back in 1969. It was a bit of a rocky start in NASCAR history for this track in Alabama, but ever since it has been widely regarded as a track that a lot of drivers either circle for surprise winners or some drivers circle because they want to avoid it altogether. Just how insane things can get here from Talladega. And Talladega, part of the Season 3 schedule. We'll take a look at the schedule just quickly for 4-Wide Racing Season 3 in our Cup Series competition. We had our ARCA race just last night. They're playing sort of a similar schedule like this, just either with some different tracks, some more legacy versions of venues. But this week, it was all Talladega week, so the ARCA Series had their own fair share of super speedway competition. Tonight, we're going to have the Cup Series take their round here as well. This is round number 10. You see it October 6th. It's the last one on the left-hand side, and that means that we're only getting closer to the start of the round of 10 in the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series playoffs, and a lot of great tracks to follow this large super speedway. Charlotte Roval is going to follow next, so we're going to go from super speedway racing all the way to road course racing, both at Charlotte Oval as well. Kansas will qualify for the Dash for Cash finale after we had the top 5 qualify over at Homestead, Miami just 2 weeks ago. Richmond, Rockingham, and of course Daytona Oval will play their shares as races to bring us closer to the playoffs, and then we'll kick things off officially December 1st over at Bristol before we make the route all the way to the championship race on December 29th, 2 days before the new year, over at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Not sure if it's going to be the new Atlanta or if it's going to be the current Atlanta we see in present time. However, it is still going to be a show nonetheless. So there's a long way to go for many, but it is still a route to the championship that many are looking forward to, in the playoffs show no different. You can see how everybody shakes up from first all the way back to P20. P10 is going to be where our eyes are centered on for now, as the top 3 already locked themselves with wins. Everybody seems to be okay on points, but it's this bubble right here where you find guys like Michael Newbraw, Tyler Werner, and Tyler Murray fighting for the final spot here in the playoffs. Craig Lownslugger also not too far behind. Neither is Eric Schaefer. You're going to have a long road if you're Nicholas Suzuki, Cody Kinsey, or anybody back there to the top 20. But that top 10 spot is what you're going to be looking for as a driver. Or if you just want to find your way in without having to deal with the stress of the points, just get to victory lane. Talladega is a prime opportunity to do just that. Well, qualifying has ticked down to a close. Drivers are sitting on the front straightaway and the start-finish line. We'll talk about that in just a moment's notice, but that means they're laid behind the Iracing official pace car, and we are ready for our starting grid. See exactly where every driver and your favorite driver will be starting here tonight from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. It's Jesse Prees, the 00, that lines it on pole, his first pole ever in this Cup Series season, with a 50.071 to lead us to the green flag tonight, followed by new series driver John Holiday. In the 2 machine, he'll line it up with just where that number is in P2 in row number 1. League owner Tyler Murray looking for some well-needed points to snatch himself a top 10 spot in the playoffs. Coming out of this race, he'll start from 3rd with Edward Scherer behind him in the number 17 car over in P4 on the outside of row number 2. You'll find Austin Riddy in the 11. He's looking for a lot of points going into this race. Logan Joyner will be on the outside of him in the 3 machine back in P6. Your 3rd row to the green flag tonight. Craig Launslager, Nathan Mon doubled up in the 13 and the 29 through row number 4 before you find Tony Kibbett and Jake Roel back to the top 10. Jake Roel was a winner over in the ARCA series at Homestead Miami Speedway. He's going to be looking for the cup win on this side as well. He'll roll off from the edge of the top 10. Speaking of 10, the 10 of Kyle Benson will roll off just behind them in P11 with Jovi Ray in the 5 machine. Solid outing at Talladega last night in the ARCA Series race. He's going to be looking for the same sort of run here starting from P12. 13th will belong to the 21 of Daniel Baldler with Nicholas Gowan on his outside in the 31 machine before you find Cody Ivey and AJ Green all the way back to P16. AJ Green started up front in the Talladega race last night in the ARCA series, did not have a good ending. He's going to be looking for a better one. Hopefully that resides in victory lane. Adam Alashire in the 4 machine will roll off from P17 on the grid with Lance Hill in the 34, an aggressive driver. Last night in the ARCA race, he's going to be rolling off from 18th. A good amount of work to do for this driver. The 97 of Ken MacArthur will line up 19th with Dustin Webb on his outside in P20, where you find Scott Baker and Brandon Gillis doubled up for the 11th row in this field. Multi-time winner Colin Forster does not take a time on grid. He's going to be lining up in the inside of row 12 with Brandon Banks alongside him in the 88 machine. You'll find Lawson Peel, new driver in the 87, to roll off from 25th. 26 will belong to Eric Schaefer back in the 22 car. Cody Kinsey in the 93 will roll off 27. 28 will belong to Lane Bullock alongside Kinsey back in row 14. 15th row back to the top 30. It's CJ Munier and Tyler Warner, 2 drivers merely looking for an entrance into the top 10 and the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series playoffs. Michael Newbraw, Austin Bloom back to P32, where you find Christopher Bishop and Cade Gimble back to P34. Pete Bruni, Ricky Rosler to P36 in row number 18. And your final row in this entire 38-car field, it's Jay Gimble in the 12 and Ant Wright in the 1 machine in the last spot, tail end of the field, 38th here on the grid. It is a huge field, nonetheless, to say the least, here from Talladega. These engines are ready to get roared here in just a couple of moments when we come to that coveted start-finish line just on the outskirts of the tri-oval here from Talladega. Let's take a look at the weather before we get started. It's an air temp of 75 degrees, but that's not going to be the biggest worry for these drivers here tonight. It's going to be the track temp that's going to bring the most amount of conversation. It is in the triple digits, 110 degrees Fahrenheit, with wind directions barely to the northeast at about 4 to 5 miles per hour. It's a mostly cloudy afternoon here in Sim, so we could see some cloud coverage over this Talladega Superspeedway. Could give themselves for maybe some cooler track temps on end. Tires won't have to worry too much. So the field in the hands of Jesse Prees and John Holiday, the 2 Chevrolet Camaros, to roll off from 1st and 2nd on the starting grid. Your row number 1 pace car going to make its way down, but they won't reach the start-finish line in the middle of the tri-oval. They're going to have to wait a little bit longer to the exit before they can get on the gas pedal and be underway here from Dega. Sights set on the field. Playoffs coming closer and closer. What a better way to kick things off than to continue the points fight over here from Talladega. Green flag is out. We're underway. Jesse Prees and John Holiday, the first 2 to the green flag as they ship for turn 1. Oh, and already one gets spun. That was John Holiday in the 37 that got spun around near the entrance of turn 3. And he's around in the back straightaway. You see the 00. Jesse Prees already letting go to the apron, but we are going to stay green here in this affair. And for now, it seems as though everybody seems to be okay. For the most part, it is a chaos-filled opening lap as John Holiday in his machine You see him limping there. No damage. He's able to save his car. But a wild start already on the back straightaway. That'll bring the lead to all the drivers up front. Tyler Murray is going to be the race leader with help from Austin Reedy. Still 2-2 at the start of this race. Already crazy. I believe he was trying to give a push. Just could not get the right amount of angle in order to make this happen as they go 3 wide. I believe that's Edward Schur back in the 17 who's splitting the middle. That's Joyner in the 3 machine. That AJ Allmendinger colored machine all the way at the top line with the 29 to follow. He's going to have help all the way up there. But no movement from the top line. It's a complete lap number 1. It's Tyler Murray in control of the race. Quickly enough, that outside lane just not having enough momentum to even get themselves forward through the field. The 3 of Joyner going to tuck back into the inside lane. One car, I believe that's Joey Ray, stuck all the way at the high side. It's not going to have enough to make things work, so it's going to be single file from about first all the way, I believe, to P20, where there really isn't any sort of battles throughout most of this field. You can see a couple side-by-side coverage right there. I believe that's Nathan Mon up at the top of the racetrack. Indeed, that is him pushing the 3 of Joyner. That's Jake Rell behind him, and the struggling Daniel Baldler in the 21 machine, way out of shape. It's going to push him all the way to the top of the track. Well, that could have been huge for the driver of the Valvoline Chevrolet Camaro. He's able to keep it collected, although everybody's going to push by him on the inside. He's going to have to try and find space. There he does find space right in front of Joey Ray, the 2 Kyle Larson colored machines. Going to work together here on the back straightaway and at least get themselves single file. There's a long line of cars before you get to 17th place Lance Hill. And even behind him, can't see anyone in sight. Second group is being led by AJ Green in the 48. You can see them there. That's him. Ken MacArthur. There's the 87 machine behind him. Brandon Gillis in the 9 machine to follow. The first opening lap, so already a desperate amount of separation here between the first group and the second group. We saw this somewhat in the ARCA race last night as a part of pit strategy near the middle of the race, but we saw everybody 3 to 4 wide to start the affair last night. And tonight, way different already as Tyler Murray just continues to lead this field. Already in the clean air, but everybody does not look like they want to push the issue too early on as we ride on board with winner at Daytona, the other super speedway race we had, and the only other super speedway affair that we've gone through so far in this season. That is Adam Alishar in the 4 machine. He's already locked into the playoffs, so no worries about trying to make the top 10, but currently running in 6th. Obviously going to look for a second win if it comes to his lap in that Jimmy John's Ford Mustang. Right on board with him. Take a moment notice and take a listen how things are at Talladega. That's Alishire up at the top, groove all by himself. I'm not sure whether he was just trying to get out of line or build up a run coming into turn 1, but he does not have any of it. He's not going to be able to move in enough time, and he's going to get absolutely freight trained by everybody in the field. He's going to move all the way back to P17, which currently resides the driver, the 34, in Lance Hill. You can watch the leaders right here, the 2 Chevrolet Camaros, Tyler Murray and the 11 of Austin Reedy. Both of these drivers, as we mentioned at the top of the show, looking for some well-needed points, and Talladega could be the opportunity. Murray is no stranger to super speedway experience. He won last season's race and the final regular season event over at the Talladega, or not the Talladega Super Speedway, the Daytona International Super Speedway. And he was able to grab the win there in that 8 machine. That gave him the first win in 4 Wide Racing Cup competition. And he's been out front all the way to the end. He's been able to survive the chaos at Daytona. He can try to do the same here from Talladega as he's getting a mirror full. The 11 of Austin Reedy so far, although they've gotten a little bit squirrely. There hasn't been any developments, though, in terms of track position passes. And you can figure that's a motive for a lot of these drivers early as you ride on board with the 10 of Kyle Benson. Probably a look to just stay content with riding around. Not going to look for any openings, not going to look for any aggressive moves. Just log these laps in. It's a 94-lap race, so there is still a lot to go through from here all the way to the very end. And you want to make sure that, number 1, you can get all the way to the end, and number 2, that you can keep your car clean in the process. So logging laps single file as It's probably going to be demoted for these guys as they move forward. Just staying here, being content with riding around, and not worrying too much about crashes or too much about drivers being way too aggressive in the opening stages of the race, and just more worry about pit strategy if a yellow does not come out. We talked about John Holiday, who got turned on the back straightaway to start this race. He's all the way back in P29, and there he is riding all by himself on the racetrack. Definitely not the sight that you want to see. Actually, no, not riding 29th, riding 38th. The last driver in this field, Cade Gimbel, is the only driver up in front, as Holiday has already gone one lap down, and I believe he did burn in fast repair. He pitted 4 laps ago, so Holiday was quick to burn that fast repair off. But now he's riding pretty much all by himself at this point of the race, and especially of lap 9. That's not exactly the plan, especially since Holiday started up at the front of this field. Right now, everybody's staying single file. Nobody has really decided to make that move. You can see, I believe there's been a growth just a little bit between the packs here, especially between that first and second group. There's Tony Kibbett right in front of the 99 machine. That is Colin Forrester in a brand new paint scheme. Had a wild paint scheme in the ARCA race last night, but the 3-time winner this season definitely not looking to push anything here from Dega. He's at least exactly fine with rolling around and finishing wherever he finishes. Doesn't matter about points for him because he's already locked in with the first 3 wins that he had to open the season in a row. Hasn't been able to get to victory lane since, but needless to say, he has been still willing to give race wins an opportunity instead of just riding around and treating every race as just any other normal race and not really doing anything to do it. As he's right behind the 7 of Tony Kibbett. He's going to work for the draft. They're kind of falling off just a little bit in this draft pack, but as for now, it doesn't seem to be the biggest concern for the moment. As they lead a 17-car group. They're all wrapped in, mostly within about a second here on the racetrack. And so it is a large group of cars before you get back here. And I think actually there's the second line. It actually developed into a third group because here's Jesse Prees, the driver who started on pole, the driver who pretty much fled back to the rear of the field after that incident with Holiday up into turn 3. And now he's being followed by Lane Bullock, Brandon Banks, and a bunch of other drivers in the field. There's Cody Ivey getting merely close to the drivers on track. And then here's this second group here out of the 3 that has developed themselves in their own group. The 97, that's Ken MacArthur, AJ Green in the 48, the 87 machine of Lawson Peel, Austin Bloom, the 34 of Lance Hill, who was at one point in the top 17. Now he's pretty much mired back here to the top 20, just keeping in line with these guys at the moment. You got to also remember that these guys are mostly teammates. The 48 of AJ Green, the 27 of Austin Bloom, the 34 of Lance Hill, they're all teammates for Stock Motorsports, so you got to figure that they may be working together in this case to try and maybe get some sort of strategy underway for the first portion of the event and then work all the way towards later, especially if it stays green where they can all pit in sequence with one another and maybe in hopes get out with the same group clustered together so that they can keep themselves in a draft and at least give themselves an advantage for later on in the race where they may need it and where they may need some help. You ride on board there with the 34. Now you ride on board. That was the 17 of Edward Scher, rocking the NOS Energy drink car, which I think a lot of people are at least familiar with. The Ricky Stenhouse Jr. NOS Energy paint scheme before moving over to JTG Daughtery. He currently rides in P5. Sure, a driver of the Cup Series since last season. He's been looking for wins, has been very consistent on in. Not eligible right now for the entire championship, especially considering that he's missed a couple of races to start. But Edward Scher in the 17, who drove the 20 last season in a Chevrolet Camaro, was looking for that first win. And he has been rather close to it last season, so he is going to be looking for that very first here from Talladega. It's a track that a lot of drivers look forward to maybe get their first win and build some momentum, but it's also a lot that many want to avoid just because of how chaotic it can be. As the top driver is actually getting close to lap traffic. There's a car right there. That is actually Holiday in his machine, so he is bound to go 2 laps down on the racetrack. And so it has not been a good start for Holiday, who started up at the front of the field. And now he's pretty much 2 laps behind the field with no yellow flag so far in sight out of the first 14 laps of this race. And while we're looking at this race and while we're analyzing single file coverage, we're probably going to mention that they're going for the long game, which means our race analytics will come into play. Obviously, there's some race analytics there for the track itself. We mentioned 2.66 miles here around the Talladega Super Speedway, elevation about 540 feet over sea level. There's the time of day. It's just afternoon in sim, 12:15 p.m. Eastern, or p.m. Central, as they would call it over in Talladega. So it is a rather clear afternoon. We should expect probably track temps to rise, especially if we're getting later into the afternoon. We'll take a look at pit road speed. It is 55 miles per hour. It doesn't look very daunting. It looks very lenient if you look at it in comparison to a lot of other tracks throughout this oval schedule, and especially here in the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series. But if you look at just how fast you're going here at Talladega, to get down to 55 miles per hour after going over 195 for most of the affair, definitely wouldn't be the easiest thing in the world to pull off, especially when you're going to be hard on the brakes and trying to get as much as you can. We're looking at 5 tire sets so far through the field, so there is a good amount of leverage when it comes to the amount of rubber you can put on your race car, although the main concern is going to be fuel, and that does mean we have to look at that fuel window and when it'll open. We should expect, with this fuel package of 75%, that 30 to 35 laps may be run on before drivers will head down pit road and go for a tank of fuel, because they can't go any further. So it's a race analysis so far here from Talladega. That should be what we're expecting to see if it stays green. That is a big if, though. I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on that, just because Talladega has lent itself to a lot of crashes, even in single file coverage. And for now, with this field single file, they aren't aggressive, but that is not to say that anything could happen from here on out. Let's take another look at this second group here, developed with Ken MacArthur. They're trying to pick up another 3. And I mentioned Stock Motorsports a little bit earlier on. One of those drivers, of course, being AJ Green himself, and he may be looking for a teammate. We talked about that little group, that little trio that's just in front. You can see right there in the windshield going into the corner. That last car, and that Aero McLaren Chevrolet Camaro, is actually the 99 of Colin Forster, which is a Stock Motorsports teammate. So he is looking to work together with these guys. The 97 of Ken MacArthur also in this group as well. So they're all looking to link up together. I mentioned that they could have a plan for this entire race. If they can get themselves together at the start within the first 17, they can knock this down, head for a strategy play all together, and then be able to maybe build up on the guys who have been leading so far throughout the entirety of the first 17 laps. There's Jovi Ray going around. There's car going a lap down. That's the one machine up at the top of the racetrack. He's going to let everybody by. But so far, it's been a calm outing from Talladega. Not something that you'd expect to see so far, but Kyler Murray continues to lead this race as the field maintains and probably looking towards a first step at potential green flag pit stop. So take a moment and step aside, but you won't miss a thing here on MaxSpeedTV for the 10th round of the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series from Talladega Super Speedway.
We've been waiting for this moment. Generations of innovation all coming together in one place. A pedigree of more than 70 years of NASCAR Cup Series history, from the past to the present, from Petty to Earnhardt to Elliott. Today, there's no more waiting. The future of NASCAR is now. Drive the next-gen cars today on Iracing and step into the next generation of racing.
Iracing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. Iracing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics and engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12-Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iracing.com.
Welcome back to the virtual Talladega Super Speedway for the 10th round of the Ford Water Racing Cup Series, and it has been all Tyler Murray since the opening incident between Holiday and Prees up at the front of the field. Tyler Murray took the lead from there on out, and he has not relinquished. It's been single file throughout at least the top 15 to 17, and we've seen multiple groups file themselves through within the first 23 laps of this affair. And we're going to bring in our second member of the broadcast team, Francisco Bacchial. Francisco, it, at least for the moment, has been calm and collected from Talladega, which is something you don't expect to see normally often, especially with the trend that we got at the ARCA race last night on Tuesday. But this is definitely a race, from the looks of it in the opening 23, it's going to be more lenient towards fuel strategy, potential fuel cases with teams and drivers working together to make sure they can make it to the end of this race.
Thanks for being up here with you, Kenneth. And, you know, you just mentioned the fuel strategy is going to be interesting here for today. We haven't had a caution quite yet, and a fuel run here is not quite 30 laps. It'll probably be around that 25 to 28, maybe the 29 lap range. And that being said, that means you can't go on 2 pit stops. You're going to have to stop at least 3 times, maybe even once for just a little bit of fuel. But you have to come down pit road at least 3 times in a full green flag race. The only thing is, I'm not so sure if that'll stay that way once we get into the second half of the race. But it is interesting in seeing this aspect of the race here. And we saw this at Daytona, if you think about it, Kenneth. We did see a lot of green flag racing in the Cup Series at Daytona.
We definitely did. So we're looking at a lot of green flag racing to start in the Cup Series here from the Talladega Super Speedway. You're right on board here with the 99 of Colin Forster, the multi-time winner this season. Talked about him just a little bit ago as he was trying to work together with his stock motorsports teammates. He has found them in turn 1, so they're all single file throughout this group here. They've also caught up with the driver up in front, the 7 of Tony Kivitt. So this other line of cars, this second group behind the main guys, they may be looking for an alternate strategy here, and it could come at a possible benefit if they can make this work in the first 25. And speaking of 25 laps, this should be the range where drivers would be thinking about going to pit road. But at this point, it could get very complicated because talked about stock motorsports, they're working as a team, but a lot of these drivers may not be working as teams. They may be working individually. So if they go down pit road, they're hoping that other drivers are going to go down with them, which means they're going to have the same hope that they're going to come out with the same group of drivers, and that may not be the case, could put them behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, pitting at different times is definitely going to break up the field a bit, especially depending how many come down in these respective groups. We saw that pitting first does gain you a good amount of time if you do the pit stop effectively. We'll see if anybody in this lead draft decides to come down, maybe even this at the end of next lap. I'm not sure if we'll see anyone this time, and actually we do. We see a couple of cars, almost the entire group is going to come down this time. You see about 4 cars there in line, staying out another lap as Reedy with a big slide able to get it down to pit road, and we saw a lockup there by the 8. So these guys very aggressive trying to get to pit road.
Couple drivers down. That obviously includes your former race leader, Tyler Murray. You also saw the 11 machine of Austin Reedy, I believe the 10 machine of Kyle Benson, 17 of Edward Scher. There's a couple more that hit pit road just before these guys did, as Benson completely misses his stall. He's going to lose a lot of time off of that and probably lose the grasp of these guys up in front. That's Holiday, Jesse Priest down pit road as well, Ricky Rosner and Pete Bruni. And the first one off is going to be the 17, Edward Scher. How about him? Going to get out first. There's Austin Reedy, Colin Forster. All these guys now looking to pit for the very first time in tonight's race. They have been not afraid to show exactly when they were going to go down pit road. But it seems as though everybody was looking for the same lap. Hasn't been anybody that has taken otherwise. It's been only a handful of drivers who had stayed out, include Jake Well, who's actually now on pit road himself.
And you saw their split strategies by those guys that came in that last time by. We saw most of them take fuel only, but a couple of guys decided to take 4 tires. You have to take a full tank of fuel here regardless, so maybe 4 tires is probably a good way to go, considering if we stay green, you're talking close to 50 plus laps on your tires. You don't want to have that old of a tires out here on the racetrack, because it can make the car really difficult to handle in the draft. But you see the time they gain. But eventually those guys on tires, believe it or not, could start to run them down, because they won't have to lift as much, they won't have to turn the car as much, they won't scrub up as much speed in these corners, and that's going to show. But right now you see right here Cody Kinsey in the 14th position, still I believe has yet to come down pit road. He's still in this group with Ken MacArthur and others, with Brandon T. Banks as well. They're still trying to stay out there and make some laps. And here are another group of people that did come out of pit road. They're trying to get up to speed.
It's the 5 of Joey Ray, who currently sits second, and they're sitting behind the current race leader in Logan Joyner. And speaking of which, all these guys did go down pit road, so there really hasn't been a full split strategy with drivers who have stayed out completely and drivers who have gone down. It's pretty much been everyone's gone down within at least 1, 2 to 3 laps, and they're on their way. They're ready to get this fuel burned and then go for the next stint, which should last, I believe, all the way to about, I'd say, lap 45 to 50 is when we should expect drivers to come down pit road for the second time, barring if this stays green. So if we look for any yellows, then that could shake up the strategy. But if we look at that projection, then we should see probably about 45 to 50 laps, or 45 to 50 on the lap counter, to make sure we get there and maybe get close to the final lap of the race. That's going to make things very tough here, because it's 94 laps here, Francisco. This is the same length that the Coke Series ran just last week for their playoff race, or what was their final playoff race before the championship finale, which will happen in Texas next Tuesday. But this is the same length, and this is very close to NIS length in nature. So you have to kind of prepare yourself in a way, Francisco, for an endurance event. You're looking at long races mostly throughout the season, but for super speedway racing, this is an endurance event, and this is an endurance test for the drivers behind the wheel as well.
This is actually NAS, Kenneth, believe it or not. The real life Cup Series race being 188 laps, this being about 50% with the 94 laps. These guys, they're basically doing half the real life distance, which is the normal NIS length. You see Rosner there dippling before the apron there. And it looks like we have the 31 of Gowan and a tandem. You see how spread out these guys are with these pit stops. That's what it's going to do inherently. A lot of separation, a lot of 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 car groups. And they're not going to be running just as fast when they're in a big old pack versus when they're like this. They can get organized easier when they're in a smaller pack, but they can't consistently run as quick. And we'll see just who's able to get organized a lot quicker. You see right there, Austin Reedy about 4 seconds behind your race leader, but he's in the top 5 position. So it just goes to show the separation, how far apart these guys are after pit stops, before pit stops, just what the change is. Several guys still yet to come down pit road as well, as you do have cars, several cars a lap down, even entire drafts that are behind the leader. So we still have groups that have yet to come down, Kenneth, and when they do, we'll have, I think, a better idea of where everyone is. And you mentioned it, It's going to be a lot of mental toughness required to get through this race, it being the endurance racing of super speedway, as you see right there, navigating lap traffic, cars that are slower, not quite working together, not quite up to speed. They'll just hop onto the outside and get by them.
He's going to get by. That's the 10 of Kyle Benson, who's, by the way, was on par with the top 15 just before the pit stops began, and now he's all the way by himself. And mentioned when he was down pit road that he did have a little bit of a mistake, overshot the box, could not see where it was, so as a result he had to back the car up and lost a bunch of time in the process. And for now, he's going to be more than one lap down out on the racetrack with practically nobody to assist, as these are the leaders you're looking at for the moment. Logan Joyner, Jovi Ray, and Daniel Baldler, these three have been key with each other since the start of the race, but for this pit strategy, they are making it work. They're going to catch up to the 19 machine. They're going to help with the draft just a little bit, and this in turn is going to possibly help the driver of the 3 help save some fuel. They can make it longer on the stint. They have to stay in the draft and save a little bit of fuel, not waste as much throttle. So smart move there by Logan Joyner to ensure that not only his other drivers that he's working with and Ray and Baldler can make it for most of the stint, that he can make it as well.
Well, it's going to be very difficult to try and save fuel here, for the reason being that most of these guys didn't hit past lap 30. I don't think anyone even went to lap 30. And to stand a chance of making it to the end of this race, you have to go at least 32 laps. And with most of the field coming in on that lap 26 to lap 28 range, we're definitely looking at a 3-stop here today, Kenneth. I don't think these guys are going to be able to save enough fuel to do one more pit stop and make it to the end of the race. So I think it's going to be a definite 2-stop. We might see that second stop come around lap 55. If we got to base it off that first stop between 55 and 60, somewhere in that area. And they're going to have to come in once again, most likely around that 85, lap 85 sort of area, maybe even 80, 85. So that's the windows we're looking at from here on to the end of the race, should it stay green. But of course, even though everyone is separated, you know that we cannot distrust the ability of there being a caution at any time.
And a caution could come out, and that could really change the field up in a multiple amount of ways, not only because multiple drivers are a lap down at this point of the race, but also because the separation has grown immensely between the top leaders and practically everybody else, and that'll obviously bring all of them together, could reset everybody on strategy, and whatever plan you had, whatever blueprints you figured out at the start of the race, it's going to be thrown all the way into the trash bin, because there's going to be none of it left by the time you reach that caution flag and have to do it all over again. This is the largest group, arguably, from the drivers that are currently on the lead lap and that did pit recently. Eric Schaefer's the leader of this group here. You watch Cody Kinsey just behind him. It's Lane Bullock in the 20 machine, and followed by Brendan Banks, AJ Green, and the 4 of Adam Alashar. So far, this is the largest, and about 5 or 6 strong rather on the racetrack. So if you're looking for any action, this is probably the closest thing you're gonna get, because everybody's pretty much splitting up lap traffic and making their own rounds. But I want to talk about here points racing. If you're going to be looking at Talladega, obviously a lot of these drivers are scared of this track for the points in particular. And at the top of the show, we looked at the playoff points going into tonight after what was a wild race over at the Irish shows in the Michigan International Speedway. What's going to be interesting here is how certain drivers are going to play the points, most notably drivers like Cody Kinsey, who are in a fight for the top 10 in the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series playoffs. He currently sits only about 35 points out of the top 10, so he's got a lot of work to do. But if Cody Kinsey can make a good race out of here from Dega, it means he can gather some well-needed points, cut that gap probably halfway, and then be able to build on it once we get to the next couple of events.
Yeah, and it depends the situation that you're in, how you attack these races. If you're outside the cutoff like Kinsey is, then you don't have much to lose because you're already out. So the only thing you can do is attack to try and see if you can put yourself in a position to gain, because in a run like this, if you stay up front, you're going to gain a massive amount of points if the people you're racing happen to be stuck in one of these groups that are half a track behind the race leader. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it is a little bit more comforting when you're able to do that. And that second group, they're starting to get a little bit organized here and trying to see if they can run down this lead group. They are very far back, I must admit, but if they're able to get their act together, they might be able to do something about it. And if you recall, Kenneth, those that are leading right now did not take tires on the last pit stop. They were part of the group that decided they were going to take only fuel. And that's a couple of seconds of a difference between taking a full tank of fuel with no tires being changed versus taking tires and filling it up with fuel. It's usually about 5 or 6 seconds difference in that, but you're seeing just how much it did as you look there on the gaps on the left side of your screen. Pitting early and not taking tires.
Well, the tires aren't really the key concern here at Talladega, and I mentioned the triple-digit track temp when we started at about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. It obviously does slicken off just a little bit, but with the way these cars have the high downforce package and lower horsepower in the way the NASCAR Cup Series are structured, and their roost package is structured on super speedways, you don't necessarily burn off the tires as much as you would as, let's say, you drove a 1987 Cup car in the Iracing service around this track, because you would be burning a lot more on the tires, and you would pretty much need them, or else you're going to be flat on your face when you compare to drivers on the fresh rubbers. So may not be the worst call here for these guys up at the front to only take fuel, because that's their biggest concern. They're not going to deal with handling issues for the most part. All they're going to deal with is pretty much how much fuel they can have in their tank and how much they will need in order to make it all the way to the end of this race. And speaking of which, a couple of drivers are already vocal about this, and with the way we saw the first segment, the aero model here for the Cup Series has changed since March. It was a new addition to iRacing a couple of seasons back. I believe it was Season 2 for 2021 after the initial build in December 2020 for Season 1. So there was a change. It was initially a way different ball game where you can make it 3-4 wide and you got really huge runs, but now you really have to play it differently. There's an air bubble between you and a car in front of you. There's side draft implemented. There is an entirely different structure, Francisco, with the way you have to run these cars and the approach you have to take. So whatever you were used to a couple of months back, you cannot use it this time around. And these drivers have shown it over time. When it came to the old package, they were all clustered in together. When it came to the new one, they've been a lot more single file in nature. So it's been a wild change, and not sure whether the drivers are either positive or negative about it, but I think maybe at least the positive side is they have to deal with less wrecks on end because they're mostly single file throughout the affair.
Yeah, that difference when they brought it into iRacing, I was definitely able to notice. But one of the things I will say is that that I noticed while driving is that feels like the package that we saw of old in the real life side of things before they brought in the high downforce. That bubble was definitely a major thing when they had the no ride height rule implemented in NASCAR. When they had a little bit of a smaller spoiler, the big runs that they were getting during that definitely felt a little bit more towards that, which obviously is not being used anymore. I feel like the old package, to an extent, of course, was actually a little bit accurate. The implementations of an air bubble definitely is realistic, but you usually see guys get to the rear bumper with ease nowadays. They're just able to absolutely push the car in front. And we don't see the two-car tandem being as powerful and as dominant as it can be. Usually if you're able to just brake a little bit, if you're the lead car and get hooked up with the car behind you, you could just sail past everybody in the field and stay like that for about 2 or 3 laps, which we see it happen sometimes. We saw it happen on Monday, excuse me, a handful of times, but I don't think we saw it for a complete lap, and we didn't really see the two cars just pull away to the point where the field can't draft back up to them. They never really got more than half a second away before the field immediately ran them down. But we've seen in races before, you get 2 cars hooked up, and they'll pull away from the field, and the field won't be able to catch up to them.
An interesting ploy that you have to use if you're a driver here from Talladega as you ride on board with the 88 of Brandon Banks, a driver that we've seen semi-consistent in this series. He's a winner in past times. Past season was the winner at Michigan last week, was unfortunately not able to double down on the victory from last season in the past race, but definitely has been a force to be reckoned with. And the driver of that 88 has been looking for that very first win in 4-wide racing competition, and maybe this route here, just outside of the top 10 with Lane Bullock, Cody Kinsey, and Eric Schaefer, could be the way to do it, as they built up a large amount of cars. It was about 6, and now they've grown it to more than 7. They've got about almost 10 in that group, if not pretty much 10 flat already in this long line of cars, aiming to get to the rest of this event. And speaking of which, we are getting to the second round of green flag pit stops, so there is still a note for concern behind the wheel of these guys in the cockpit, especially given the fact that the leaders have grown into a smaller group of their own, and it's become difficult to keep their pack together. And remember, they're going to have to pin a couple laps time, which means probably further separation to the field and a possible botched call if anyone gets this wrong.
Yeah, if you're in this group, you cannot afford a mistake. That's the crucial part in this. Because you have such a big lead, because you have such an advantage, you can take it a little bit easy knowing that you don't have to worry about losing 10 spots or even losing the lead draft coming down pit road. You all have to just play it safe, come in. If you lose a second, it's not the end of the world because you still have a pretty sizable lead over the rest of the field. And I'm pretty sure that those guys actually decided to come down pit road. We have Reedy and Scherner in at the least. And guys are starting to cycle in and out through the field. I believe we're having pit stops starting to take place.
A couple drivers, I believe, have already made their way down pit road. Get a note on exactly who those drivers are. You mentioned Reedy as one of them, so we'll take a look at him or a couple drivers near the rear as they're developing a large group, and they're already passing the likes of Nicholas Gowan and the others who were at the moment running within the P5 spot in the top 5 at that specific amount of time. But there's just been a large switch between drivers, and when they are gonna inevitably go down pit road. There's the battle right there. You see the 22 get way up high. He's got all the momentum from all the cars up top. He's gonna easily be able to slingshot in front. He's not clear just yet, although he does have the opportunity to do so. He's just waiting for everybody else to get the support right behind him and make this work. So it's been interesting to see where position and track position, as a matter of fact, has played into the hands or played outside of the hands of these guys for the first segment of this event. But for now, nobody has hit pit road. It still remains Logan Joyner in the race lead as he's caught up with a couple more drivers. These are drivers on the brink of being put one lap down.
And he's trying to put them a lap down, as you can see, moving up to the top, and the rest of those cars are going to follow him through, trying to see if he can lap some more cars. And it's been interesting. This lap car in front of him has been the one leading the group. So for the race leader, he hasn't had to burn more fuel than those in second and third, which is a big advantage. As if you're thinking of them trying to pit a little bit later, which won't exactly help in any sort of situation, considering they'll have to come down again. But at least it does put him on a little bit more of an equal handling / fuel situation as those on the lead lap with him, and allow the lap car to be the one towing them around, burning more fuel, having to make those moves, and they have to just follow along. So it does make their job easier. You see here, Schaefer able to get clear to the bottom. The 93 of Kinsey was able to follow him along. They're single file once more, and it doesn't seem like we had pit stops there. Might have been an error there with the timing there, indicating a little bit of a glitch. But we will see pit stops here in about 5 to 10 laps, Kenneth. And when we do, it'll be a little bit more clear what the final picture is for this second half of the race is going to be once we know that there is one stop left, and we'll be able to clearly see what needs to happen for there to be a chance for anybody outside the top 3 to win this race.
It's going to also change up the agenda for many of those drivers. You mentioned Stock Motorsports. They've kind of broken up in their own reigns. And AJ Green, the 27 of Austin Bloom, they're kind of outside of their own ranges. You see the 48 there, but just behind the 88 machine. Those are not teammates. They're just drivers working together for now. But 27 nowhere in sight. Neither's the 99, as Forster got put one lap down, as I guess is a mistake of pit road, or just did not catch up enough quickly with his teammates to gather himself. Austin Bloom, I believe he's out of this race for good. He's back in the rear of the field, about 22 laps down, so I think he's already out for good. I don't believe there was an incident with the 27 earlier tonight, but it seems as though he's already out. That does leave one less for Stock Motorsports in this case. And with their plot of working together to start, has certainly fallen apart already quickly enough, as we're already halfway through this race. And speaking of which, already at the halfway mark, I think it's time to bring you our race summary as of lap number 48 of 94. Currently have 46 laps to go here from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. There's been no cautions, no caution laps, which was a stark difference between what we saw in the ARCA race last night, because we saw 3 cautions in the first stint. By the time we got to lap 49, we had already been more than 5 cautions at that point. We've only had 2 lead changes, and that's mostly been because of pit road strategy. We had the initial leaders get swapped with Tyler Murray, and the second lead change came around here where Logan Joyner has kept the lead ever since. That's your current race summary as of the halfway mark of tonight's coverage.
You know, Kenneth, even though we had a couple of green-white checkers there at the end of the race last week at Michigan. For the most part, the last 3 or 4 races have had a lot of green flag runs, and you have to think that you have to get used to being able to make these green flag pit stops, because that's going to be a crucial part in how these races are determined. And not just for today, but moving forward with the next couple of races. I believe we're going to the Roval next week, and we know for sure there's not going to be any cautions there. So it's going to be interesting for guys next week coming from a super speedway to have to readjust back to a road course, but a road course as challenging as the Roval is.
Yeah, we also talk about the rarity of road courses throughout the entire Cup schedule. The only road course we visited was Watkins Glen. That was September 15th, so it's almost been just shy of a full month since these drivers have competed on a road course in this kind of competition. So once they come back there next week, it's going to be pretty much 2 days shy of a full month from September as drivers are going to go down pit road. So there is going to be a plot to have when we get to the Roval, as the 22 goes way deep into pit road. He's going to pass the 1 machine. That was a lap car. A couple of guys almost skimmed the grass just outside of the pit road lane, but it seems as though everybody's fine, and we have our second set of green flag pit stops commencing in lap 51 to try get near the end of this race.
We saw that lapper there going rather slow there, and we saw the 22 almost get into the back of him on that pit entry trying to be aggressive, but it seems like they all made the entry at the very least, that they kept it on the racetrack. This lead group has yet to come down pit road. They're probably going to try and stick this out just a little bit longer. They do have the advantage to do so, and that is going to put almost the entire field 1 lap down at this point. Kenneth, they control this race at the moment. Austin Reedy and Edward Scherner are the only 2 other cars on the lead lap. I think Roel is right now as well, but he's going to get lapped as they get up to speed. But insane that we only have, even with the pit stops, that we only have 5 cars on the lead lap at the moment.
We had a lot of cars put 1 lap down out of the first cycle of green flag stops. So with these guys staying out, it has only exacerbated the effects of drivers being put under the lead lap. So that only leaves 6. Jake Rowe is the last one, and he's the one leading this group. And I think that's why he's been put in a peculiar situation, because he doesn't want to get put a lap down. He doesn't want to be behind the 8 ball and not have to worry about lucky dog positions or anything like that. But at the same time, he also needs to save fuel, which he can't do. So he's kind of conflicted on his own end. It's like, all right, it's either I save fuel to try and make it as long as I can, maybe get closer to the end of this race and not have to worry too much, or get lapped in this field, so he doesn't necessarily want to pull back and let these guys by. So that's why exactly he's been lenient with the 3, with the 5, and with the 21. He's just kind of sticking with them. The only problem is, by the time they go down pit road, it's a matter of whether he'll follow suit, because they're making the decision on their own right and they're behind him. So it's going to be worse on end for the 19 to react in this case in his Toyota Camry. This time around, they're going to come off turn 4. And again, no call to come down to pit. Only a couple. That was Tyler Murray, the 13 of Craig Lautenslager. Especially near them. They were already a lap down before this cycle of green flag pit stops. So they're going to come in for service. It's going to limit this group back down to 4.
Reedy and Scherner in as well.
Reedy and Scherner going to go down pit road. And obviously everybody just trying to get back up to speed. There's AJ Green in the middle of the Mon and Gowan sandwich, the 2 black Chevrolet Camaros. They're going to get caught in a moment's notice by the 22 of Schaefer, who's already continued to work with Cody Kinsey, the 85 machine, now bringing Tyler Werner, the Daytona winner from last season, to open the campaign, as they're going to go actually sailing by. Remember, these guys want to unlap themselves first by the time they get to the cycle where the leaders go down pit road, Francisco. They don't want to lose any sort of ground or position, and it's a move by Schaefer and Kinsey to say, hey, I don't want to necessarily work with you guys. I want to be the first one on the lead lap and gain as much track position as possible.
But notice the line did get stalled out there because they were going around that lapper. It forced those front 2 to try and go to the bottom. They didn't want to lose time side drafting and going 3 wide, and that abandoned those 2 the cars there on the top side. So now they're going to lose touch with the group that they have been working with all race to this point, and that is going to split them up. They're going to eventually try to fall in line, Kenneth, but those guys are now split up.
That outside line, you see the 85 and the 33, they're broken up, but they are going to get caught here by the likes of Green, by the likes of the 22, and they're going to eventually, actually not the 22, the 31 and the 88 machine as well. So they're all going to try and work together for the most part in this single file lane and then just wait for the leaders to begin to blink. And speaking of which, they have already done so. All of them went down pit road. That was Joyner, Ray, Daniel Balder, the 19 of Jake Rell also went with them too. So they all communicated this to perfection, but they're separated. They're kind of linked out, as you would say, and now that allows the guys like Eric Schaefer, maybe Austin Reedy, and the others to catch up and maybe gain all this ground back. It's just a lot of time to gain.
They're too far back to really gain anything, Kenneth. They're half a lap behind these guys. That's how far back Eric Schaefer is from your race leader. He is 23 seconds behind the 3 of Joyner. So there's just too much time to gain there, Kenneth. And I would find it very difficult for somebody outside the top 3 right now to do something in order to win this race, because you have to look back another 14 seconds from your leader to find Reedy and Scherner. So the strategy the top 3 have employed here, Kenneth, has worked to absolute perfection. And even for the leader, because he's in a group right here, he has a little bit of drafting help there from, you see, the 34 and the 97. They're actually going to buy him. But even if he latches onto these guys, he's over 2 seconds ahead of the people he's racing for the win. So if he's able to get clear of those other 2, he just has to nail the draft, stay with the draft of somebody, come down pit road one more time, and that could be his race win.
Definitely could, but at this point, it's getting dicey because drivers are getting into their groups rather quickly, and you're going to have to adapt or else you're going to fall behind. And for, in this case, Joyner, he is almost on the verge of falling behind if he's not able to get with the group in enough time. As Jake Rell has already got himself accustomed with the 5 of Ray, the 21 of Balder, and a couple other drivers as well. So they're already on the chase. So you see them in the 13 of Lautenschlager just behind them. But it is still a matter of chess, basically. Full strategy game here from Talladega. And everybody just trying to sort themselves out for the rest of this race. Second round of green flag pit stops already completed as we continue our coverage of round number 10 of the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. We'll take a short break, but you won't miss a thing. Don't go anywhere. There's more to come here on MaxSpeedTV.
Iracing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. Iracing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12-Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iracing.com.
63 laps down on the 94 scheduled for round 10 of the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series here from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. You currently watch your race leader, Jovi Ray, switch the race lead under green flag pit stops the second time around. It used to be Logan Joyner, but Logan Joyner's back to P2. So now that gives the 5-car machine, the Kyle Larson, Hendrick Cars paint scheme of Jovi Ray, the inevitable race lead just behind the 19 of Jake Well. Of course, welcome back to our coverage here on MaxSpeedTV. Kenneth Bueno, Francisco Bacquiao along with you for the ride, and it has been a slow burner of a race. We haven't seen one yellow flag fly since the drop of the green flag. It got rather close in lap 1, turn 3, but apart from that, we have not seen any sort of incidents that have brought us under yellow, nor has put the field to rest. It has pretty much been green, green, green all the way through, and these guys right here, top 4 on end, or top 3 rather on end, have been rather reluctant to keep themselves together. They've done a good job of doing just that with 30 laps to go.
30 laps left in this race, Kenneth, and one more pit stop. But what this does do is that the window is open. If you want to pit now and be able to make it to the end of the race, you can do so and not have any concerns. I don't think anybody will start pitting within the next 5 laps, of course, as they do have fuel, I believe, to go all the way to about lap 80, 85. They'll probably wait until then to do so, but you see right here, this group actually going to start to race each other as they're working past the 29 there. Not sure what this is about. Maybe they're trying to get certain people in a group or trying to change up the order. You see right there, 29 is going to try and slide up and maybe gets let in line. You see a little bit of a bobble there. They're going to move back down to the bottom, so a bit of a shakeup on this draft.
These guys are definitely racing each other. I think what you said is probably pretty much the hit on the head for the nail of these guys, at the point that they may be looking to get certain people within a draft and maybe filter some guys out. So I guess with the 29 machine, they either didn't really trust him in the draft, or they wanted him to be further back and wanted to connect maybe Banks and Bullock and these guys up here closer, so they had to filter him out, get out of line, and then try to get themselves to the way where they can all work together. Maybe that is the case, not entirely sure, but definitely looks to be the situation on hand for these guys. This is arguably the largest group, if not the largest group outright in the draft here so far tonight. That's been the case for most of the event, apart from the first segment where we had at most about 17 cars in a group back to Lance Hill from Tyler Murray when he was leading this race. But most of the groups have been either 3, 4, 5 cars at best, and then that one's just a sheer 8 cars at its peak. And they're definitely gaining some time on the trio that sits behind the top 3. That's Austin Reedy, Edward Scher. Actually, no, it's not even a trio. It's a duo here with Kyle Benson as a lap car.
Kyle Benson is a lap down, but he is still working with one of his teammates there in the 11 of Austin Reedy. Austin Reedy has been in the top 5 all race, Kenneth, but he hasn't been in touch with the leaders. We saw Reedy have a lot of bad luck there yesterday. I think even if this race goes green and he's able to get this 4th place finish, I don't think it's a 4th place that he's going to be too upset about. As you see, he gets right to the bumper of Kyle Benson, trying to see if he can push him.
And also mention it at the top of the show when we looked at the playoff standings. As of right now, obviously they are not confirmed because we are not yet at the playoffs. We're still waiting for that to come through once we start over at the Bristol Motor Speedway in a couple of weeks' time. But as of right now, if the playoffs were to start today, that would be the grid that you see. And Austin Reedy was part of the top 15 to top 20, about a handful of points behind. So if this race goes well for him and a P4 effort comes out of Talladega, it's probably the best case scenario for this super speedway, instead of being put behind the garage where a lot of fates could be decided, especially at this kind of track, and especially here at Talladega, out of all places, even regarding not including Daytona International Speedway as a part of that conversation. But Reedy just trying to build up all the points that he can, build up consistent finishes, and by that time he can get closer to the top 10 by the time we get closer to Bristol, and maybe he can even overcome the deficit that he has in points right now and put himself as a part of this series, or maybe even get a win. That's the easiest way to lock yourself into the top 10, is to win a race, and there's a couple other drivers in contention for that win to lock themselves into the playoffs. Jovi Ray is close to being one of them in the top 20. He has yet to resurface back to the top 20 in points after winning at Pocono just a couple of weeks back earlier in this campaign, but at this point, it gets very tight on point standings depending on the drivers you look at, as the 11 of Reedy, the 17 of Scher, and the 10 of Benson are going to kind of split these 2 lap cars, as Schaefer rather, in the 22 is aiming to catch ground, and they are definitely making up the time.
That's probably one of the things that maybe is going to determine who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. You mentioned there the 5 has a win. He's not top 20 in points, though. It's a little bit easier for him to try and make that top 20 versus the 11 of Austin Reed to try and make the top 10. You take that into account, then you also think about the fact that that would take up 1 spot. So that pushes everyone down to 1, theoretically, on that playoff standings, making it a little bit even harder for the 11 to try and catch up to the last position. So a lot of work would have to be done, as you see Cody Ivey all struggling right now, going up and down there, as the 22's going to try and go past him, does not want to stay behind him for very long. But when you take that into account, if Joby Ray is able to get to the top 20, that's an extra position, an extra 10 or so points, depending on the actual standings, that Austin Greedy's going to have to make up. That's going to make it all the more difficult. And when you think about it, it's not the same as it was last season. If it were last season, I think you can confidently say Austin Reedy can get it done. But if we have to be honest here, Kenneth, this season has had a completely different tone, a completely different form to it than we had last season. A lot of different winners this time around, and most of the people that we're used to seeing win races have not had that same success this time around, with the only exception really being Brian M. Smith. So a lot of familiar faces from last season that were up front battling for wins, contending for that championship in the end, not having that same success this time around.
And you also take a retrospect of who was part of the championship for last season. Reedy was one of them, Scott Healy was the next, Kyle Benson was the third, and Tyler Murray was the fourth. Scott Healy doesn't run in this series anymore. He hasn't run in a long time since that championship win over the Charlotte Motor Speedway last campaign. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to see more of Scott Healy like we wanted to after his initial championship. Then you get to Austin Reedy, you said it there. He hasn't really had the best of luck, hasn't had the most consistent finishes out of the field in this campaign. Neither has Kyle Benson. He struggled with some bad luck. He hasn't been able to quite correctly put races together. It's just always fallen on a crash or maybe an unlucky pit stop or some mistake or something unlucky that happens to him, unfortunately, that gets him out of contention of races and doesn't put him in the conversation to win. And then you look at Tyler Murray. He's had a considerably better season than what he had last campaign, but it hasn't been dramatically better. It hasn't been in the case where it's been a wild difference. It's been a little bit better, more consistent finishes out of the 8. And I'd say out of the 4 from the championship last season, Murray has been the best out of the bunch. So it's been a radical shift. And then you add in the case that Brian M. Smith was eligible for the playoffs. Then you have the consistent runs that Colin Forster put up to win the first 3 races of the campaign. Then you add in the dominance of Stock Motorsports as a team. There is so many factors that change from the off season of season 2 to this season here in season 3 that has pretty much changed the entire landscape of who's who and who's the best out of the entire group. And for now, we're looking at pretty much an up-in-air championship for the most part as Joby Ray continues to lead. And speaking of which, we're getting close to pit road strategy, so maybe that could be the chance for drivers who may not have enough luck to get back in position of greatness.
And you know, Kenneth, it also comes down to, are you able to maximize an opportunity when it's given to you? One thing that does come to my mind is back at Homestead, as you know, I was running a one-off race. Had I not been in that race, you could have easily potentially seen that 69 of Michael Woolley win a race. He's a series regular. If he would have gone to victory lane that race, that could have completely shaken up these point standings. I'm not exactly sure where he sits in the official standings, but that would have definitely made it potential for another playoff spot to be taken away by someone capturing a win. So it's moments like those where that could really determine how a season plays out. Just a difference in somebody winning a race or somebody not winning a race. Doesn't even matter if they're running full-time or not.
Definitely has made a difference. And I remember it's kind of, in a way, it kind of feels odd when you look at the playoff standings. So I remember taking a look at it just a couple of weeks ago to get a feel for how the playoff picture was looking so far, especially at the halfway mark. And I saw Joby Ray's one of them because he won at Pocono, but he wasn't quite necessarily top 20 in points, so he was kind of single-filed out. There was another winner that was also down there as well. Can't quite remember which driver it was. I believe it was Dean Brummett, the fact that he hasn't won in a while, so he's been buried in the point standings as well, just due to the fact that he hasn't shown up for many of these races. And then I see Francisco Bacallao, and I'm like, wait, I know that it's there, and it's kind of like, if you take a look at it from first glance, it's like you're a winner and you just haven't shown up or you just haven't been able to make races, but it's mostly just because you wanted to make the one-off and you won the race. So technically, if you ran enough races, if you were eligible in the top 20, you wouldn't be in the booth. You would be here in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. You see cars actually exiting pit road there. It looks to be that second group. We see Scherner, part of that group, exiting pit road. That NASCAR really stands out there. So these guys are going to start coming down pit road. They're going to have more than enough fuel to make it to the end. The race, some guys maybe not taking tires because this last run is going to be significantly shorter than what we've seen out of every run at this point. Reedy exiting ahead of Scherner. They've been together for most of this one. You see Kyle Benson there as well, and the 29. A little bit strung out, most of this group is, as they're longing most of the back straightaway, but they should eventually get back together. And this is inevitably the battle for the 4th and 5th position, as your main group is going to come down pit road. Jake Roel has been the lapper, but he has been the leader of the group for the most part. We're going to see what exactly they decide to do. At this point, they're just matching what everyone else is doing. With that big lead, they could just mirror their strategy, not lose too much time, and they could try and ride it out and wait for that last lap to really race each other, because the last thing they want to do is get into one another, cause a yellow flag before the end of the race, and then screw it up for everyone.
And with this pit stop, they can kind of buy some more time, because in this case, obviously, it's going to be fuel only. Splash for everybody here. There's Joyner, there's Ray, there's Balder, and now Jake Rell. A nice job for all of them to stay clustered together out of pit road. But this is buying them more time, because with 19 laps to go, that means you still got a good amount of laps to put yourself back into a rhythm on the racetrack, get yourself collected with the guys you're going to be working with in terms of the draft, and then just drive. Get yourself, lock these laps to the end of the race, and if you're going to make a pass for the win, then worry about it with a handful of laps to go. But at this stage of the race, you know that you're basically confirmed. You've checked the box on fuel, and now it's just all about putting laps together, staying in the draft, and making sure you can get all the way to the end, and also hoping, with luck, that there's not a yellow, but a yellow does come out with 18 laps to go. We're going to try to see exactly who might have been involved. There was some smoke up ahead on the back straightaway, and that is Daniel Baldler in the 21 machine. We saw him come out with the main group, and he's the cause of the yellow flag.
And Kenneth, you saw how they took fuel only there? It was exiting pit road. He lost the car on the apron of the racetrack, was trying to keep it under and trying. And as you know, here at Talladega, that apron, it has a little bit of a bank to it. He caught it the wrong way, trying to correct the car, and that sent him up into the wall, causing the yellow flag. We just mentioned how they have to take it easy here so they don't trip over each other and throw it away for everyone else, and that's exactly what's happened here.
And there you see he gets loose on that transition. It does get tough on that transition between the apron and the banking here at Talladega. The only miracle is that almost everybody escaped as one car got barely into him. Don't think it's going to be significant damage for the driver there, but just take another look at it. Exiting pit road, you're hopping up through the gears, you're in the high revs. There's that kind of sliver of ground here that's on banking that you can get more speed out of. Right there, it clips that yellow line there just on the apron in between itself and the banking on the racetrack. And then gets the car loose, tried to keep it straight, tried to save it, but ultimately is not able to do so. Strikes the wall once, almost does it twice. There's a car going by that almost pretty much hits. And right there, a car backwards on the back straightaway is not a good sign. And that is easily enough to bring out the yellow and to put us under our very first yellow for the first time all night long. So we were talking about the long game, Francisco, about pit strategy, how everyone was going to play this game correctly. That has thrown it completely out the window, has set fire, has set it ablaze, has thrown it into the ocean. Every euphemism you can use to say that it is gone, it is gone.
Yeah, and it's gone in a heartbeat. And and if you're a viewer, you're probably wondering how did he lose control there on the apron? And I mentioned it there. That group decided not to take tires. That makes it all the more difficult to try and stay in the throttle with that banking, with that lower fuel than normal, with those worn tires. It makes it very difficult, barely clipping the racetrack there, trying to be aggressive on that little banked part of the apron. That really upset the car, got it sideways, and the minute he got it sideways with those old tires, it was going to be very hard to correct without losing significant amount of time. He was trying to stay aggressive so he doesn't lose the draft he was in. Unfortunately, resulted in a wrecked race car. Fortunately, no one else involved, but we see the end result here. The field is going to get up once again. Unfortunately for most of these guys that are a lap down, the leaders had just exited pit road. They will come down again, so that means they cannot take the waiver in. So only one car will be getting a lap back. That's going to be the first car one lap down. And who this really worked out for was Jake Royal, in all honesty. He was the last car on the lead lap for all those laps. And not only does he get elevated position, but he is going to now be properly on the lead lap and have a chance to race for this win after towing around the leaders for most of this race. So you have to feel happy for him, avoiding staying a lap down for most of the race, and now he's going to have a chance to battle for the win. If I was somebody in the further backside of the field with how few of cars there are on the lead lap, I would have come down pit road and taken tires. We saw nobody take tires under the green flag stop. I would have come in, put some tires on. You're not going to lose too much track position anyways. It definitely would be a right move if you were to have 13, 14 laps under green flag with people on this old of tires. I think it could have made a difference.
It definitely could, but you also have to give the situation here. Circumstance between the drivers are in the top 10 that are on the lead lap versus everybody that's a lap down or more. And now they have to pretty much bank on more yellows, the drivers who are one lap down or more, because they want to get into lucky dog position. And maybe for some of them, going down pit road is not going to be worth the risk to take at this stage of the race with 16 laps to go. You're watching Jake Royal here. He's going to be able to cycle back. He's in P10 currently as of timing and scoring. The reason everybody's in front of him is because those guys are one lap down or more, so they are going to take a wave around ultimately, and you'll see Jake Royal as a part of the outside of row 5. It just obviously it looks very different from here. We can also confirm that the 20 machine of Jane Bullock was the other car that got into the 21 of Daniel Baldler while he was spinning on the back straightaway. It was the Rowdy Energy Toyota Camry that got into him, so that's exactly why he has a little bit of damage on his Camry. He's a little bit further back, just behind the 87, but that was just to confirm he was the other car that barely got into him, and that was the second car technically involved in the incident to bring out our first caution. So lights are out on the Iracing official pace car. That means we will go to green flag racing with exactly 14 laps left in this race from the Talladega Super Speedway. It has been the race that's been in control mostly by Joey Ray, Logan Joyner, and Daniel Baldler. But now Baldler is out of the equation with a damaged race car. It's all about what Joey Ray and Logan Joyner can do once we come back to green. And now this eventually resets everything. All the guys who were kind of in contention but did not have enough to gain the deficit that they had in track position back, they can gain it here as they come 2 by 2 all the way back to the front straightaway.
And Tyler Murray is going to be on the lead lap once again. He is tail end of this group in terms of the physical placement of his car. He is in the 15th position right now. The driver that 8, we know he led those early laps, Kenneth. We'll see if with this brand new opportunity, if he's able to make some moves to try and get up there and battle for this win. All I know is that single file is probably out the window at this point. 14 laps to go. It's time to go race for the win.
Exactly. If you were trying to get back in single file at the start of this race, you are not going to do it here. If you're going to start to make moves, this is going to be the time to do it, because if you can't build an outside line, chances are you may be too late. Pace car going to make its way down pit road for the first time since we began on lap 1 of 94. We're going to go to green flag racing with 14 laps left in this race. Joey Ray, your race leader on the outside of row 1. Logan Joyner to his bottom side in that AJ Allmendinger Hyper Ice machine. Then it's the 11 of Reedy on the inside of row 2. 17 of Scherer on the top side. Nathan Mon and the 31 of Nicholas Gowan. Your third row to the green flag. Field wobbling all over the place as Barney the flagman waves the green. We're back underway with 14 laps to go. Joey Ray, Edward Scherer clear to turn 1.
And you saw a lot of people in the front struggling, and that's those old tires. They're on at least 40 lap tires, almost, for most of these guys that did not stop under this caution flag. And you see the front half of the field immediately trying to go single file as Scherner all over the back bumper trying to push the 5 as this outside line is failing to get formed. And in fact, there's almost nobody up there.
Jake Royal, the only driver up there on the outside lane, but he cannot find the space to tuck himself back down. There's more separation here once you get past about the top 6 on the racetrack. There you see Royal in his 19 machine. He's finally going to tuck behind the 87 machine, and there is no outside lane apart from 3 cars all the way near the rear of the field, so no moves being played yet. Maybe looking for 10 or less laps to go as Joey Ray crosses the start-finish line, still in maintain in this race.
Very impressive how just one lap under the green flag and everybody got single file, Kenneth. They do not want to trample over each other, it seems, but one thing you do have to keep in mind is that with this package, you can't wait until the last second to try something. You have to work on something, try it for a couple laps. You see right there, he's going to get into the back of the 5, and Joey Ray sideways. This is not going to be pretty as he goes into turn 3. He's still sliding as people are starting to make moves. It doesn't appear he comes back up on the racetrack. He's still keeping it in line there, but you have to feel for him. That's probably his chance at the win done. He does have a straight car, still trying to keep it under control, but that is a chance at the win done for the 5.
Joey Ray immediately taken out of contention. He's going to need yellow to come back through the field. That gives Edward Schur the current race lead with Logan Joyner to follow behind. They're trying to make a second line up at that middle lane of the racetrack. That's the 29 of Nathan Mon and the 31 of Nicholas Gowan, just aiming to make something possible, but they just cannot find the space nor the momentum as 93 of Kinsey sends it way deep underneath Jake Rell. I believe he's going to make the pass complete. Actually, no, he's going to stay back. But for now, it is still the inside line being dominant, although the 31 and the 29 are hanging in there.
And the crucial thing is here, you have to side draft. You have to get on the quarter panel of that car on the inside, pull them back, prevent them from moving forward so that you can at least maintain, then start to make a forward progress on your line. But you also have to be calculated with it, because if you try to go down there and side draft that car, and the car behind him is on your quarter panel, then you're just doing the same thing to yourself, and that's how you lose ground quickly. But you see they're going to do just that. They're going to lose a lot of ground quickly, and that outside lane is no more, at least in the front side of this field. Puts out front Edward Cherner, who was running in the 5th place position for most of that green flag run, Kenneth. He finds himself up front. We see cars below the yellow line there, getting to the inside of Jake Rowe. I'm wondering what's going to happen with that. I'm not sure how they got down there in the first place, but we do know that these race control will definitely take a look at that before determining anything that goes on. Maybe some positions might have to be handed back. And see Roel sideways there off of 4.
And Roel gonna also be forced up to the top. Here comes Banks, and now here comes Eric Schaefer in the 22. And these guys are not running for position, by the way. These guys are running for pretty much, or some of them actually are running for position. Some of them are about a lap down as they tuck back down to the inside lane. They're not going to have enough to keep themselves stable up at the front on the outside lane, so that's going to leave Rowe the only one leading that top groove. Then they maybe tried it out for a couple of moments and then seamed back into the inside. But for now, with 10 laps to go, coming to 9 laps to go, the moves need to be made. Although maybe some drivers could be content with laying back until maybe 2 or maybe the final lap of this event.
And Jake Roll's getting a push on that outside lane. He's trying to see if he can get up there. One thing to do point is that the 11 of Austin Reedy is not on the lead lap. He is 1 lap down, but he is the first car 1 lap down. So if a yellow comes out with him in this position, he is back on the lead lap. But even better if he's able to get up there and get himself back on the lead lap the old-fashioned way. You see them picking up there because he sees that outside lane is starting to make some progress. We see the 88 of Banks jump up there. Eric Schaefer has jumped up there. This outside lane is going to start making some progress. They have a good couple of cars there, and they're going to start having some forward momentum.
Schaefer now leading the group up top. That's Brandon Banks. There's the 93 of Kinsey. Remember, these guys are working almost all night long with pitch strategy, and now they've got a chance to put themselves up in the front of this field and give themselves a shot at the win. Everybody's wobbling over the track as the 97 and MacArthur gets put into the outside wall. He's not going to get spun or anything, so no yellow will come out as a result. But here comes Schaefer up to 3rd on the inside lane as they bobble down low.
They're stacking up big time on that bottom. They're trying to get aggressive, but they can't do anything. We saw it yesterday where the inside stacks up a lot, pushes them to go 3 wide for a moment. You see just how broken up that inside lane is. That allows Eric Schaefer to challenge for the lead.
There are 3 cars now all by themselves at the bottom. Jake Rell's the only one left, but it's about almost half a second to a second gap between the two, so that's only giving the outside lane more momentum. And now they're getting more cars on their side. That's Tyler Murray, the 85 machine. Roel trying to peek through to the middle. He's going to make it 3 wide for a moment in turn 3, and nobody knows where to go. Here comes Brandon Banks to the inside, and he's going to block down in front of Schur. Here comes Brandon Banks to the race lead.
A calculated move there by the 88, just getting right underneath him just as he was clear of the inside. And he's going to come right up, and he's going to get into the 22. They make contact as he tried to block. They're going to be 3 wide.
No momentum there on the outside. That probably broke them up for good. With about 7 laps to go, they're going to try and recuperate the best that they can. They're going to shuffle. I believe that's the 93 of Cody Kinsey. Indeed it is. on the outside lane, so it's going to push the 87 of Lawson Peel next in line to push, but they just continue to get unsettled, and that only leaves that inside lane with more positivity that they can keep themselves hold strong up at the front of this field. But they're coming to the final 5 laps, and the risks need to be taken.
If you're the 88 of Banks there, you have to wonder, did you have to move up the way you did to block that 22? We saw the first contact, so he probably thought that he had to block it, but you have to think that he had the forward momentum there on that 22. He just moved to the bottom, he was getting past, and he was probably going to get a little bit of an extra help from behind. So if he had been patient, maybe he could be right now leading this race. Instead, he's on the outside of 3 wide and continuing to fall back.
He's all the way back there. That second line is completely dissipated all the way to the brim. They're still about 3 wide. That's Jane Bullock in the middle. Brendan Banks up at the top. Kyle Benson trying to make something work down low. They're swiveling for position back there, but it does not matter because all the action is at the front of the field. There we see the 97. He got up into the outside wall a couple laps ago, so he's going to get put 1 lap down. His race may be indeed over for good, but it's Edward Scher at the front of this field in the 17 machine who will take 5 laps to go from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. Does Joyner or anyone else have anything for the 17 to make a move?
It's going to be very difficult to get around him, especially when they're single file like this. But key things to point out in this lead draft, we talked about Austin Reedy being a lap car, but behind AJ Green right here, he has a teammate who is a lap down as well, Colin Forrester. You see him right there in that Harold McLaren scheme. Real nice looking paint. Their teammates, Forrester's not on the lead lap, so he can just push this 48 with whatever he wants to do to try and go for this win. We see a car actually way below the apron. He's able to join back without having any issues there. But look at this. We're going to have a battle for the lead here. No help for the 3 on the outside immediately. He's going to lose ground as nobody's going to go up there with him.
Logan Joyner may have just made his bed at the entrance to turn 3. He pushed the 17, got him way out of shape, gave room for the 17 to join back on the track, ended up on his outside, and now he is trapped. Nowhere to go. Going to try to single file himself back in. He's going to be able to do so just behind the 19 of Jake Rell, but that does confirm 4 laps to go for Edward Scher in the race lead. This pushes Austin Reedy to 2nd, AJ Green to 3rd, and like you mentioned, Francisco, teammate in the 99 of Forster to help. If need be, Reedy's going to peak just a little bit, but no movement just yet, as here comes Rell and a couple other cars to make an outside groove work.
The best thing for Scherner right now is Austin Reedy. Austin Reedy is not on the lead lap. He's a buffer right now between himself and the inside line. So the only thing that the race leader has to worry about is that outside line. And we see the driver who was towing everybody, leading a line, staying the last car on the lead lap. He got the caution he needed, and now he's trying to go up there and battle for this win as he is side by side for 2nd with AJ Green. We'll see if Joyner can push him up there. It's going to be very difficult. We're coming to 3 laps to go, and the top 2 or the top driver with the 2nd physical car have tried to break away there for just a second.
It's up to 5 now, maybe more, 6, 7 cars up on that top lane, but they have only been able to creep up to about, I'd say, 4th or 3rd on the racetrack. That's Lawson Peel down low, and then there's Colin Forster. He's a lap down, but I did need to mention, just to correct you here, Francisco, the 11 is running for the win, so he does need help to get up to the front, and he can take away this win and pretty much lock himself into the top 10 of the 4 Wide Cup Series playoffs as he's a part of a 4-car breakaway. But now this only makes things more dangerous for the top 2 as the Stock Motorsports teammates are just behind, ready to strike.
Well, if that's the case, then we know, and we have a wreck all forward. The 19 goes spinning down the side of the track, and we have a caution that is going to put us into overtime. It looked like the 19 had a moment there, maybe got turned by, I believe, the 8 of Tyler Murray, and I don't know if he hit the wall there, probably did. You can see a little bit of left side damage there on the 19 of Rowell, but that is going to shake up everything for one last restart, and I believe kind of the way they were lined up there, I believe that's going to put Colin Forrester back on the lead lap.
We'll take a look at the replay. This is the 19, stalls the outside lane. I think just trying to make an aggressive move to fill the space just to get in front of the 8 of Tyler Murray, but indeed made the move a little bit too late. You see the 8 gets the momentum. 19 tries to check in front, and he gets turned, and then I think it's right about here. Well, the fact that he's spinning obviously gives way to a yellow flag, but multiple drivers were loose on end trying to get around this as Rowell was able to keep it off of the inside wall, but cannot really escape some of the rear end damage that he got off of that incident, and he's all the way back in this field as a result, and that will slow the field down and give us a path directly into green-white checker territory. Here from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway, we'll see if any calls are made down pit road, but with the way things have gone, I don't think anybody really wants to risk the track position. As sure, Reedy and the rest of the field will look onwards to pit road. They'll deject the opportunity, and they'll come through the tri-oval and head straight forward. They do not want to waste any time whatsoever, Francisco, to get this race finished. And with 2 laps to go now when we cross the start-finish line, this is exactly a mirror of what we saw in the ARCA race last night, at least with less carnage than we saw in the ARCA race on Tuesday. But we still are in green-white checker territory, and that does mean that second line could still have enough time to make something work.
Yeah, there's still time, Kenneth, but also it is Talladega, so even though there has not been that much carnage through most of the race, green-white checkers at Talladega are a completely different race in of itself. You could think of green-white checkers in general as its own thing, but green-white checkers at Talladega, it always seems to run on a different level of adrenaline or whatever you want to label it as. Just to survive a green-white checkered here is very difficult. To win on a green-white checkered here takes a lot of luck as well, especially if you're not the driver in the lead. Usually, if you're the driver in the lead, you control your destiny. You decide what to do as the leader of the race. If you're further back, usually it's about jumping into the right line, having the line that you're not in have a problem or a wreck happening, things of that sort of nature. But if you're in the front, if you're the second team, it is up to you and where you place your car to try and win this race, especially if this is the only overtime we end up using. We know we have 3 available, but if only just this one gets used, then you definitely have to do your job to try and keep the lead. And it's going to be difficult to do so. We've talked about Austin Reedy and the struggles he's had. He has a chance to win this race. How aggressive do you get to win this race? Obviously, a win puts you into the playoffs, and if you have an incident, if you crash here trying to race for the win, it also can cost you a lot of points. The unfortunate thing is, if it happens on the second lap, on the last lap, it might cost you those final positions, but those drivers 1 lap down or so won't be able to pass you for position. So if you think about it, if you wreck with 2 to go and have a lot of terminal damage where you have to tow or anything like that, that invites people who are laps down to get by you, versus if it happens on the last lap, you might still finish in the top 20 without a doubt.
Take a look at the field pacing. This should be 1 to green by the time we reach the start-finish line, and Lane Bullock, I believe, is either the lucky dog or the first car 1 lap down. In this case, it's between him and Brandon Banks right now on the track. Brandon Banks actually did get the wave around, so he is the next car to get that lucky dog under this yellow flag, so he'll be 13th by the time we get back to green flag action. Jane Bullock will be next in line if we get another yellow flag. So pace lights are off on the pace car. That'll give the field the ability to go back to double file action. And that means we're going to go green with only 2 laps remaining in this race. Just to give a quick rundown of exactly where we are in this race, we are in overtime, so we are extending this race by a handful of more laps depending on how many attempts we burn off. The green-white checkered rule works like this. We'll go to green flag racing with 2 laps left in this race. The field will try to get to the white flag and finish this entire thing off. If a yellow flag comes out just before the leaders get to the white flag on the racetrack, that means we will double them up and do it all over again. We have a total of 3 attempts to get it done. However, if the leaders do cross the line for the white flag, by the time a yellow does not come out, or if a yellow comes out after, then we'll just run it all the way to the end. Yellows actually don't play a factor. Whatever happens, happens. If anybody crashes, then they're just going to have to try and finish the best they can, even with a wrecked race car. And if we do burn up all 3 attempts, that means whoever's in the lead at the time of that last yellow on the 3rd attempt of the green-white checkered before the white flag will indeed be the winner. The field will be frozen, and we will end this race behind the Iracing official pace car. But we do have the opportunity to finish this under green. It took us 3 attempts. It was the last attempt we had in the ARCA race last night to get the race done and to conclude a winner in Brian M. Smith. How many attempts do we use this time around?
And we'll see if this is the only one we use here tonight, Kenneth. Very difficult on which side to take here. I would like to think that this is the only one we'll have to use, but a part of me thinks that it being a green-white checkered at Talladega nonetheless, we could very well see another one before the end of this race. And interestingly enough, our race leader choosing the outside line. We'll see if that's able to work out for him. Maybe as a defense mechanism, maybe he feels that the outside is going to get formed up on this restart, and instead of trying to block it, he wants to already be in it.
We saw the 17 choose the outside lane the last time we went green. So we'll see if this plays out into his favor. The 87 of Austin Peele will be behind him to give him push. Meanwhile, Austin Reedy will be on the inside of row number 1 with AJ Green to help as well. Green flag comes out early. Sure is going to be able to go onto the pedal fast enough, and he's going to be able to clear. But now the question is, how long does it take before everybody swallows him up?
That's too big of a lead. You don't want to get that big of a lead here, Kenneth. Normally a big lead's always good, but not this time. When they have the draft like this and when they're getting single file like that, they're just going to have a huge run. Does he make this block? Does Reedy go for the move? Reedy going to stay behind him. They're going to stack up there for a brief moment. You see all these cars jump into the outside line. They're trying to get the outside going now. They're going to get to the outside of Murray. Murray's going to get trapped in the middle. He's going to force 87 down to the apron. They're able to sort that out. And here comes that 21 who was involved in that first caution who brought it out. He's up the middle.
And they are 3 wide behind them. That's Daniel Balder trying to make something stick. Logan Joyner aimed to pioneer a top groove, but it does not work. Field will come to the tri-oval. It's Edward Scher that will take the white flag in the final lap here from Talladega as Kinsey and Schaefer try to make the outside line stick.
Most of the drivers in the front of this field have not won this season, so we could get a first-time winner, at least in this Season 3 campaign, Kenneth. The top 2 sort of broken away. We see AJ Green lagging behind on that inside line, not really able to do anything, and they're going to get turned. The 56 goes around off a turn 2, further in the back, hard hit to the inside wall. They're going to be racing for this win. What does Austin Reedy do to try and win this race?
The 56 of Michael Newbrough spun on the inside, but of course, no yellow out. We are on the white flag. What does Reedy and everybody else do? They've been patient enough as they wreck behind. Balder hard into the outside wall, but this is the final opportunity to take a win. Here comes Kinsey. Austin Reedy with no move yet, and out of the tri-oval, Edward Scher in the 17 will capture his first 4-Wide Racing Cup Series win from Dega.
A big win for the driver of the 17, Kenneth. And you saw they had a big run off of turn 2 on the restart, and Reedy did not go for it. You have to wonder, with that big of a run, should he have gone for it?
Not sure whether he was looking for the win or he was looking to help Scher in his case, but nonetheless, Reedy, we talked about him being buried in the point standings in the top 20, just trying to look for leeway to get into the playoffs. This is going to help him dramatically going into the Charlotte Roval. But for Edward Scher, he's going to get his first ever win after being so close multiple times. Francisco, last season we saw him as a contender in the latter half of the campaign. But now he can finally call himself a winner. There's Kyle Benson to give congratulations. There's AJ Green who comes home 3rd to give congratulations as well. Austin Peele as a rookie in this series, 4th place for him. And Tyler Murray, who just tried to make an outside line work to get by the leaders. He ends up in P5 for this affair. But after 2 cautions to come out, it's the 17 of Edward Scher. He's going to burn it down in synchronization with Austin Reedy. The 2 celebrating after their performance. And what a race it was. What a victory it was for the 17. And after so much conversation about whether he can get it done in this series, he doesn't have to say anything to the people no more, because he already has the victory in tow as he burns it down.
And I know we mentioned this, Kenneth, but yet another first-time winner in the series. Once again.
It's another winner in this series. After last week had Brian M. Smith, he was a repeat winner. But at this point, we have had a total of 6 different winners. I think this makes it 7 in this case. And Brian M. Smith, who won at Watkins Glen, won at Michigan just last week. Well, that gets broken here with Edward Scher in the 17, who burns it down here from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. With that, let's take a look at the full field results, see exactly where everybody finished at the end of 97 laps. It was an extension out of the 94 that was scheduled for tonight's coverage. Edward Scher, your winner here tonight from Talladega, and coincidentally, he's the only Ford in the top 10 tonight. It's a field full of Chevys behind him. Austin Reedy pushes the 17 to a win in P2. AJ Green for Stock Motorsports ends up at the last step of the podium. It's Lawson Peel, the rookie in this series, ends up P4. Tyler Murray, league owner, comes home with a solid top 5 from Dega. Cody Kinsey, who had been working with Eric Schaefer all night long, ends up in P6. It's P7 for the 88 of Brandon T. Banks. Nicholas Gowan will arrive in P8. Logan Joyner and Jovi Ray to your top 10.
Looking at 11th through 20th, we see Nathan Mon in the 11th position. Colin Forster, who was a lap down prior to that overtime restart, finishing in the 12th position. Not the top 5s we're used to, but I think he made a solid recovery there considering he was a lap down and was able to finish inside the top 15. So a good recovery there by the driver, the 99. Michael Nubraho got turned on the last lap. Despite that, still 13th. Definitely better than if everyone were on the lead lap. Eric Schaefer, first car 1 lap down. Jake Rowell finishing 1 lap down after being involved in that crash after getting back on the lead lap. Daniel Balder, who was trying to make a move there as well with that 19. He finishes in the 16th. Lane Bullock finishing in the 17th position. Jesse Prees, your pole sitter, finishing in 18th. Just never really could recover after that lap 1 incident. Christopher Bishop and CJ Munir rounding out your top 20.
And behind them, you'll find the 7 of Tony Kivitt, who comes home in P21. Scott Baker in the 40 will end up P22 at the end of tonight's coverage. Jay Gimbel, 2 laps down in 23rd. 24th will belong to the 81 of Cody Ivey. Craig Lanslager, who was doing well earlier on in this race, will come home back in P25. 26 will belong to Ken MacArthur on 97. Kyle Benson, after going 1 lap down under pit road strategy, he ends up P27. Lance Hill ends up P28. Ricky Rosner P29. And rounding out the top 30 is the 33 of Tyler Warner.
And looking at the rest of the field, we have Pete Bruni in the 31st position with Cade Gimbel in the 32nd, and Wright in the 33rd position. Adam Alashire, who won Daytona, unfortunately unable to defend his win, 55 laps down in the 34th position. Brandon Gillis in 35th. John Holliday finishing in the 36th position. Austin Bloom, we didn't see him much today. I don't believe he was involved in a crash, but in the 37th position he finishes. And Dustin Webb rounds out the largest field we've had all season, in both series, in the 38th position. We were very close to having a full field tonight, Kenneth.
And Tyler Murray, league owner, just a couple of hours before we went green, said, hey, everybody, get yourselves in here because we're going to have a large field here from Talladega. Certainly no disappointment in terms of field size. It's a full 38, but the focus is on the driver in P1 at the end of tonight. The 17 of Edward Scher, your winner, and the driver in victory lane after 97 laps here from Talladega. It's our time to talk with your race winner. Edward, I think from start to finish, we knew it was a calm fest for most of it. It wasn't necessarily the Talladega of familiarity. It was one of a lot of single file racing, a lot of games in sort of pit road strategy, but I think in classic Talladega fashion, we end this race under green, white, checkered scenarios, and you were able to hold on and control for the end of this race to take your very first win. Walk us through how you feel and walk us through how you were able to get it done.
Pretty good, to be honest. I mean, I always love super speedway racing. I mean, Talladega is one of my favorites tracks to go to for any particular reasons. I just love how much of a chaos it makes during the races between 3 and 4 wide racing and the strategies and the drafting. Even though drafting's iffy here, I mean, it was fun tonight though. I mean, we had a couple of times we were green flag racing, trying to catch packs and stuff, but honestly, it's just big credit to everyone at Big Fast Racing, Kyle Benson, Tyler Murray, Austin Reedy, and everyone else back at the team who put in the work and got the setups right. And we pretty much led a good charge the whole night. Unfortunately, 2 of us had struggles. Me and Reedy were able to carry it out though, so it's pretty good for us to bring home a 1-2 finish for Big Fast.
And talk about this performance by Big Fast Racing. You and Austin Reedy got hooked together near the end of this race, and it looked like you guys were inseparable. It looks like you guys, no matter what happened, no matter who went up at the track, no matter what moves were made, you guys would stay together, and you guys would be pretty much sworn to keep yourselves together until the very end. How strong was that all the way to the end, and how much did that play, obviously, to the end of the race as you and Reedy crossed the line?
Well, I felt better knowing that I had Reedy with me the whole time. I mean, me and him have chemistry. We work together really well. We've done a bunch of super speedways racing together, and we know how each other works around each other. So like, he knows what I can't do and I know what he can't do and what we're both good at. So we ended up managing our strategies there at the end to where I can start on the outside and we can both be able to get a solid finish, and we were both planning on staying together to hopefully get 1-2. Either I win or he wins, no matter what. But all in all, it was a great night for us, and I'm happy the outcome turned out.
Well, it turned out in your favor, and this becomes your very first win. Could you say you expected it this season after performances you had in the last campaign, or do you? What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I wish I could compete more in this. It's just due to scheduling and all that kind of stuff. It's been a good, like, road. I mean, last season it was rough, getting a lot of second, third, fourth place finishes, and I mean, yeah, it's a super speedway race, so you could say it's kind of lucky and whatnot, but it takes a lot of skill kind of to put yourself in the right position to be able to get these wins, and especially in this league, it's hard to get wins. So, I mean, with the guys we race against with each and every week, it's pretty fun racing against these guys whenever I can, and yeah, I mean, I miss 4 wide terribly, but I think I'm going to start doing a little bit more often. I heard next week we're doing the Roval, so I might show up for that one, so yeah. Probably see me around a little bit more. I had a great time tonight, though. It was fun.
Control. I think that's the word that you can use to kind of summarize the ending of this race for you and your very first win. Before we let you go, Edward, I know there's a lot of people that make it happen for you. So who are those people? The teams, obviously, Big Fast Racing, but is there anybody else you just like to give the love and shout outs to for tonight?
Just the fans for watching the stream. You guys for broadcasting it as always. Basically, Team Razor also. I'm part of their team and all that. Like I said before, like you said before, Big Fast Racing, Reedy, Murray, Kyle, and all them. I also want to shout out to Reedy, Murray, or Murray, Reedy, Murray, Reedy, Motorsports, a new team based off of Austin Reedy and Tyler Murray that I've been a part of for a little bit now, and all they've been able to help me, and also me helping them get better at iRacing and all this stuff. But yeah, pretty much that's it.
Well, Edward, we certainly appreciate the time. From Victory Lane, we want to congratulate you on your very first win here in the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series from the virtual Talladega. Big congratulations again. We'll let you go celebrate, and hopefully we look forward to seeing you at the Roval in 1 week's time.
Thanks, fellas. Have a great night.
Edward Scherer, the winner after tonight's 97-lap race from Talladega, his very first win in this series. We'll move back to the driver in P2, and arguably the driver instrumentally involved in this race victory. It was teammate Austin Reedy who makes it a big fast 1-2, and Reedy is caught up on pit road with our very own Francisco Bacchio.
Reedy, we saw you running in the top 5 through most of that long green flag run to start the race, and we saw things amp up towards the end, and you were still able to maintain that strong track position. In the end, it is P2. What are your thoughts?
It was a pretty, it was an interesting race. I'm surprised that we got lucky because the lead lap, or the lead cars wrecked each other coming out of pit road. So me and Eddie got a little lucky there. But I knew you couldn't leave the bottom, and I know you had to have the numbers behind you to even get a run or even stay with the pack. So just didn't leave the bottom, and heard people followed us.
We saw that the outside there was struggling towards the end to try and form a proper run, and we saw you have a run off the turn 2 there on that restart. Do you think you could have maybe made a move, or was it going back to what you were just talking about, how you maybe thought that the outside wasn't going to have enough momentum to where it could have potentially formed up into something?
Yeah, that's the risk you take. Is if I make that move, I'm going back to 20th. So I decided to just stay on the bottom and push Ed. And stay tucked behind him. I'm glad Green stayed behind us there and didn't try to make a move also, because I think once you go to the top, you better have a lot of help or you're going to get hung out. So it's a tough decision, but I think you got to just sacrifice some to get some.
A sacrifice indeed, and a strong P2 effort does mean you gain in the point standings, and we know that for your playoff chances, you are in a severe need of points. Runs like these are definitely going to be helpful. With the Roval and the Charlotte Oval being the next 2 races, what are your expectations and or thoughts on your playoff situation as we move forward the next couple of weeks?
That situation is going to be kind of tough with me missing and having to leave early into races, but I think that Charlotte and the Roval are really strong tracks for myself. I think I've learned a lot over the last couple of years, or over the last year, of just not running official A fix races and just going to GT3 Cups and and learning how to actually drive road races. I think that's going to help me a lot next week. And then Charlotte is just, I mean, that's where I learned iRacing at. So I think we're pretty strong going these next 2 weeks.
Of course, the next couple of weeks are going to be interesting in showing up how our playoff field is going to start looking. Once again, a strong P2 effort here, Austin. Who gets the shout outs for making this effort possible?
We got to thank I don't want to say his name, but the old man that made the setup. We got to thank TJ's Team Foundation and morethancape.org for their charity work, and I'm always happy to have them on the hood. And we got a cool looking car made by Tyler Murray. Just that matte black is just always looking good to me, and just happy we finally got a good finish.
Of course, a good finish for you, Austin. Exactly what you were looking for, exactly what you needed. And we hope to see you out there next week at the Charlotte Roval. We also hope to see you out there in the ARCA Series. 5 flags. Good luck, Austin.
All right, thank you, Ferris. Let's go.
That's Austin Reedy for Big Fast Racing, the 11 machine who comes home in P2. We'll talk to the penultimate driver in our segment of interviews. The driver who comes home in P3 for Stock Motorsports is the 48 of AJ Green. We'll bring it down from pit road. And AJ, arguably this race went, I think, a lot calmer than a lot of people expected. There was a change from fixed setups to open setups to try and expand the racing here, but obviously a very interesting race at hand with strategy at the focal point for you. How did that race work, not only individually, but trying to get your teammates involved as well?
Well, yeah, at the beginning, I got separated from the main pack pretty quick. The setup wasn't really good, leading a pack. So I had to get behind someone and have some help behind me. But then some teammates started falling back too. So that second pack, we had, I think, maybe 3 or 4 Stonk Motorsports drivers in it. So, you know, we were all wondering like when to pit and all that stuff. And the open setup, I mean, my open setup wasn't that great. Some other people's setups were a lot better. I'm surprised I got P3 with all that stuff. So luck definitely went in my way somehow. I don't know how.
Well, you end up in P3 nonetheless, and obviously this race went down a green-white checkered territory. Was there a thought in your mind about going to that outside lane? Because I know a lot of people kind of went up there and kind of bailed quickly. Was that in the cause for you, or was that just, I want to stay here, I want to stay single file, I don't care where I finish?
Well, I was going to go high and help Cody. I saw the 8 behind me cut low, and I knew when he cut low, if I stayed high, I would have lost that spot, maybe even a couple more. So I had to cut low real quick to get him. Luckily, you know, I was clear and nothing happened, but they wrecked behind me. So bad luck. Well, you know, sad for them that we couldn't all race it out to the end. But I was just keep that bottom really, and it was all good.
Well, for you, it ends up in P3, and going into this race, to know that already we're in the second half of this regular season, you came into this race P8 in the point standings, just a couple of spots shy of being on that bubble for the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series playoffs. So after this finish and the third place affair, what do you feel about going for the rest of the season? The Charlotte Roval, for the other tracks in store, what do you see for the rest of the regular season to try and at least cement your spot into the top 10?
I mean, looking at the schedule, I think I'm gonna be fairly good with the tracks coming up. I only have a problem with maybe 1 or 2, but some practice there will help a lot, and a lot of officials will help there too. So I think I'll do good. I hope, fingers crossed, and hopefully I can make that round of 10, because those tracks in there I'm pretty decent at. So.
Well, nonetheless, no, there's a lot of time left for the playoffs, but for you, it's third place here from the Talladega Super Speedway. AJ, we want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and of course, congratulations on your solid effort here from Dega, and wishing you the best of luck when we go to the Charlotte Roval next week.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's AJ Green, comes home in P3 after tonight's race from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. We'll take a moment to talk to one more driver, and this is per request. This is Tyler Murray, league owner, wanted to come in here and give some special shout outs. So we'll give the floor here to the league owner, Tyler Murray. And Tyler, I think I mentioned it just before that a couple hours before the race, you said you pinged everybody in the Discord chat and said, hey, we're going to have a full field here tonight, so get in as quickly as possible. I don't think there was any disappointment in the turnout. 38 cars total. You had a large field, if not, I think the largest in this season in total. So walk us through that, but also walk us through how this race went and your thoughts overall.
Yeah, man, I want to start out by just giving a huge thank you to every driver who takes the time to show up here every week, takes the time out of their Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Thank you guys for putting this broadcast on for us, and most importantly, thank all the fans who watch and give us a reason to even put on this broadcast. Yeah, I mean, being a plate track, stuff like that, I knew we were going to have a pretty decent turnout. We tried something a little different since iRacing's aero package is a little uncompetitive at this point. We know we were running the open setups tonight, and I knew for a fact that was going to draw some attention to guys that we don't see every week. And I'm just hoping that a lot of these people who showed up for just this race realize how competitive this league is becoming and how hard guys race around each other, and want to come back, and maybe we can start seeing some 30+ car fields every single week here. But yeah, it was a fun race. You could definitely kind of see as it went on in that first run where your setup sat, whether you could keep it out front or where you were going to be at. And luckily that late caution fell after I sped on pit road, and I was able to get back up there and start battling for a win. But overall, I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody who drives here in the 4-Wide Racing Series, and all the fans that make it possible and give us a reason to put this show on every week.
Certainly, I think a show is to describe this race from Talladega tonight. And with the changes you've made, obviously as the league owner, you're at the helm of the ship here from the very beginning. And over time, you've been trying to change this league. You've been trying to get people in. You've been trying to make sure that the competition is at the highest that it's ever been. What has been the reception over time of this series as you guys have developed it and you guys have continued to change into what it is today?
It's definitely a great experience, I think. I think we have a extremely productive and cooperative community, not only of guys who show up every week, but people who hop in our Discord and help each other out and always talking to each other. It seems like every day when I log on after work to just run some races, I open up Discord and somebody's sitting in a channel with somebody who's not on their team. They're just doing fixed races online with each other and just having a good time. The community's great. The group of guys we bring in are all really receptive of everything. This all started right as the whole pandemic was going on with Roman Long running the league, and once he went back to work, he wasn't able to put the time in and entrusted me with taking it over. And he set the foundation and the groundwork for what this is today. And I couldn't do it without obviously my co-owner Austin Reedy. He plays a huge part in it, and everybody who helps in the race council, Craig Lautenslager, Nick Vizzuti, Matt Roberts, all those guys who help us with input on decisions that we should be made in the league, so that way it's fair for all drivers. It's just a great community overall, and everybody's very receptive of all the changes, and I think it's turning the competition level way up, and it's some of the most competitive racing I've ever done online.
It's been obviously a transition from pandemic 2020 to what we have here in 2021. But overall, I want to talk about the future here of this series, especially within this season. I know this is the third season of Cup competition with these guys. Obviously, there's been new faces. There's a lot of the drivers who have been here since day one. How is the excitement level for all of this going into the playoffs, where we saw a lot of great competition in the round of 10 and the championship 5 last season? So what do we expect here for the championship 5 in 2021 this season?
I think it's going to be an absolute just shot in the dark on who's going to take this championship this year. I think everybody top 20 in points has a chance to still make it into the playoffs, and even guys sitting outside of there have a chance to get in that top 20 and get a win and in into the playoffs. It's really, there's no one horse that you can put your money on here. Earlier in the season, it looked like it was going to be Colin Forrester when he ripped off 3 wins in the first 3 races, and he's definitely got a huge gap there, but I still think anything can happen here. Anybody can make it into the playoffs, and I think overall it's going to be, last year's playoffs were competitive. This year's going to be a whole new notch, and it's a battle to even get into them at this point. And, you know, just hoping that I can get my car and some of my guys in there and maybe come away with the trophy this year.
Well, Tyler, we certainly appreciate the time that you're taking to talk with us here and to thank everybody that's a part of this league. And obviously, there's a lot of excitement for what the competition is going to be when we move into the playoffs and maybe when a new season comes about for the Cup Series after, and even the ARCA Series that's done so well this season as well, and how things are going to fare through by the end of 2021 and into 2022. Tyler, we're remiss not to congratulate you in the top 5. We can't ignore that at all. It was a good run for you. You led 25 laps en route to this, so I think a big congratulations didn't do for that. We thank you again for taking the time, and we wish you the best of luck, of course, with the league moving into the Roval, and of course for the rest of the season throughout.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for all the work you put on. To any of the fans watching this, go over to 4wideracing.com. You know, that should get you all set up, get you all helped out for trying to make contact with us here at the league administration. If you would just want to even become part of the community, not even race every week, but if you want to get behind the wheel and battle out with some of these guys, we're always looking to add more people and, you know, maybe get to a point where we have this 43 car field every week.
Well, Tyler, exciting times ahead, at least ahead. We'll take a moment to thank you once more, and we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the races throughout. And next week at the Charlotte Roval, I know you'll be competing there. And I guess, I don't know, I'm not sure what else to say other than thank you. But,
yeah, man.
Definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work you guys put in. Thank you for giving me the chance to come up here and talk to the fans.
It's Tyler Murray, the 5th place finisher, of course, league owner, looking for a lot more to the 4Wide Racing Series and exciting times up here in 2021. Well, this concludes our driver segment for interviews, and that means we'll step up back to the booth with Francisco Bacchial. Francisco, this race, I think, from the cases that a lot of people make at Talladega for the chaotic racing, the big wrecks, the pileups, this race, I think, showed us that there's a different side of the super speedway racing, and that side is also appreciative of, well, the strategy portion of the race. We had a lot of green flag laps, which pretty much opened the door wide open for drivers to pull different strategies and to see which drivers had the best knowledge. Also, given with the fact that they had the open setups here for tonight's race, I know it was the finish that a lot of people expect out of this track, but we saw a lot of strategy, we saw exciting racing, and it's Edward Scher coming away with his first ever victory.
Yeah, Talladega and Daytona, the 2 restrictor plate races this season, we've seen long green flag runs, which is not something you exactly expect out of those races. We always traditionally like to think that those races usually end up having a couple of short runs with cautions, short runs with cautions, but we've had at least half the race in both instances go green flag racing. So I think if we take away from this is that for the regular season finale at Daytona, we could see something similar. We could see green flag runs, pit strategy come into play, and knowing how impactful it's going to be on the playoff situation, it could very well be one last twist that we could see. Maybe we see somebody that's right there on the cusp of maybe not having enough points, but is in that top 20 and gets a win when they desperately need it to happen and make that playoffs and completely shake it up. You never know, because and at any moment, with the way this season's gone, anybody can have their Eric Almirola moment, steal a win, and make the playoffs and just shake it up entirely. And with the Roval being next week, we know that the likes of Brian M. Smith is going to be a contender. Obviously, your winner last season, Kyle Benson. We'll see if he can repeat it, his success there. And, of course, as we move on through the rest of the season, Kenneth, it's just going to be very interesting seeing just how everyone attacks each race and how we start getting a clearer picture as to what everyone has to do to try and help their playoff situation, because we're going to keep talking about this, because with every race, it's going to be inching closer and closer and closer. And before you know it, it is going to be down to our 10 drivers trying to battle it out to make it to that final race of the season.
Well, here's the journey on your screen where they will get to the round of 10 and the start of the 4Wide Racing Cup Series playoffs. Of course, we've already knocked off the first 10 races of the season. Talladega, October 6th. That's being crossed away. Now the next race comes the Charlotte Roval, and right after the Charlotte Oval. Both of them going to be the Charlotte pretty much double week header, I guess if you can call it, staying in the Charlotte area before we move to Kansas for the Dash for Cash finale, Richmond, Rockingham, and then back over to the sunny beaches of Daytona to give ourselves the end of the regular season on November 17th. We'll start the playoffs with Bristol we'll head to Texas, Nashville Super Speedway. That's the first time that track has ever made an appearance in the schedule. And not to say that we'll have Talladega only once, because we'll have it twice. We'll see Talladega again as the cutoff for the Championship 5 before we conclude things on December 29th, just shy of New Year's Day at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, where we'll crown a Season 3 4-Wide Racing Cup Series champion. Well, that concludes our coverage of round number 10 of the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. I want to thank Tyler Murray and everybody as a part of the race council that makes these things happen each and every week. And a big congratulations to Edward Scher for Big Fast Racing, first ever 4-Wide Racing Cup win coming at green-white checkered territory. So follow us here at MaxSpeedTV, and for my colleague in the booth, Francisco Bacalhau, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long and good night from Dega. We'll see you next week where we shrink everything and go road course racing from the Charlotte Roval.